You know, this is truly one of the most pristine areas in the country as far as backcountry and wilderness. Where you really want to go to is a place like the Golden Trout Wilderness and see the areas that the golden trout reside in.
Oh, got him. The fact that TU is doing everything it possibly can to protect a species that is as amazing and as picturesque as the golden trout as well is really what I think everybody should really kind of look towards.
Yeah, you're there.
Thankful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. It's like
California Golden Trout is the state fish. It has a super small home range, something only like 600 square miles, and so it lives just in the headwaters of the Kern, and so you'll only find it in the southern Sierra. It's got a super unique home range in that it's very high elevation, typically above 7,000–8,000 feet. So it's a pretty unique habitat, very short growing season. So they're small fish, but they live in this sort of decomposed granite stream system that gives a gold coloration to the water. So the fish camouflage, they have this beautiful gold color on their underbelly, and it just makes them like the most beautiful species.
Yeah,
The Golden Trout Project is something TU has been working on before my time. So before I came on board with TU staff, golden trout were going to be listed as a threatened or endangered species. And TU worked with that petition, and to combat that, a conservation strategy was created. And we were part of that team that helped write that strategy 15+ years ago. And pieces of that strategy are stream and meadow restoration. Golden Trout Project, like that defined name, was started sometimes in the 80s. We had the TU South Coast chapter plus a bunch of Federation of Fly Fisher clubs, also led by Howard Kern, to come out and do these massive volunteer efforts every single summer for the last 30 years.
So primarily what we were doing to start out with, the main thing was doing genetic mapping, really kind of getting an idea of the golden trout wilderness, looking for genetically significant areas of golden trout and where we would really have kind of more hybridized fish, and being able to identify those watersheds that really needed to be worked on. If you've ever been to the Golden Trout Wilderness, which is on the eastern slope of the Sierra Nevada, it truly is God's country. If you're going in during the summertime, it is just absolutely the most picturesque place you can be. It is truly what wilderness, the Big W wilderness, was created for, is to create areas like this and protect areas like this.
We were really able to kick this off. California has water bond money, Proposition 1 money that has come through and has done a lot for restoration. And that money, so it filters through the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, and they've been a huge supporter in this project.
Stream flow installation at the downstream.
So going forward with construction and implementation, we're still really heavily funded through the state with the Wildlife Conservation Board, but also our federal Keystone Agreement with the Forest Service is going to fund a large portion of construction as well. Meadows take up only about 1% of the landscape in the Sierra Nevada, so they're a super, super small portion. but it's something like 60–80% of the biodiversity, so they're insanely important in terms of their place on the landscape and what they do for species. Climate change in the Sierra Nevada has really come to form in the change in the precipitation patterns as it has in other places. We're getting a lot more rain on snow, so it's a lot of heavy-duty runoff that's occurring early in the season. And being that these are in size systems, the water just shoots out like a fire hose, and it's not being stored in the meadows and the floodplain system throughout the summer. And so then when you get to the late season, there's very little to no water in the system, coupled with just hotter temperatures. So you've got less water and warmer temperatures, which is just bad for trout, right? Our work addresses that in starting to slow that water down, keep it in the stream, raise the groundwater elevation, connect it to the floodplain, and that will help have that higher density of water in the late season to combat climate change.
The way we're trying to do that is to capture sediment that's coming down, and the way we are doing that is to put in structures. And these structures, we call them post-assisted log structures, or we call them beaver dam analogs. So we pretend to be a beaver and build our own beaver dams. When there's a flood, instead of that water just staying in that trench and eroding it more and it going down, if it's close to the surface, the water comes out and spreads out on the floodplain and loses a lot of energy and wets everything, so it can build resilience to floods as well. And then if all this stuff is wet, it's harder to burn.
It's important to me and to you to use the best available science in how we design and construct our projects, how we monitor project effectiveness. We really want to make sure we're doing this effectively, so we've invested a lot of money in the monitoring. We worked really hard to bring in some of the leading entities in the designs. Folks that are considered the lead ecologists in this field have all worked together to create like a really solid project design and project effectiveness monitoring plan so that we know what we're doing is working.
I'll go center stream if you guys want to hang for a line.
And then maybe like if one person gets a fish, you can just like exchange.
I think it's important to think about, we're really trying to do this at a landscape level. As we're designing and planning these projects in the future, they're addressing the source, the threats, but then also the sort of degraded habitats in the perimeter, which ultimately are all connected. It's all one watershed.
If it's a little steeper, they're closer together. Exactly. Yeah, that's
Being that the current range for California golden trout is almost entirely on Forest Service land, we have to create a really strong partnership with them and also the user groups, because Forest Service land is a multi-use land management agency.
We partner with TU and other people to help come in and do meadow restoration work, and that gives us the capacity to actually do the work on the ground. If it wasn't for TU, I have a hard time seeing how a lot of this meadow restoration work would get done.
And in this project, we felt like to really make it work, we needed to work with these diverse user groups and figure out how they use the landscape and what is most important to them, and sort of like mesh our values in a way that created a sustainable recovery.
Partners are really important. I mean, it's kind of where we're going. Not only with watershed, I think with recreation and some of our other aspects of our organization that we need to partner and collaborate, and that's going to help us to get things done. I think without that, we're going to be spinning our wheels, basically.
That is teamwork.
I personally have tried really hard to make sure everybody feels like they have a role in this. And so I'm just really trying to think about how other people use the place and how our work can just like really parallel with their needs, and so that we can all, be friends at the end of the day and come towards a common goal. I've always been an angler. I've got pictures from when I was a little kid, like on a spin reel when I was 4 years old. I went to my undergrad and graduate was in fisheries, and so I've always worked in the fish world. And so, this TU job was my dream job, and so I think being with Trout Unlimited and working with golden trout, which is such an iconic species, this is probably my staple project of my career, honestly. In being an angler and being someone who really values these rare endemic species, I couldn't ask for a project that hit all the check boxes for the things that matter to me personally. That coupled with what I know matters to our membership, what I know matters to the community. I think that if you're a conservation angler, that this would speak to you. Just like any sort of restoration project that focuses on fisheries. Most of our fisheries across the West are super degraded from historic land use practices, right? So there's always a reason to care as an angler in my mind. How can you not care?